Let's address the world outside of October's biggest feud and head to the left coast, where we saw the Buckeyes from Ohio State lose track of time in the end against the Oregon Ducks. Both are clear top 10 teams in college football right now. What was the difference maker for the Ducks in this game? Let's start with the QBs for both teams. Neither threw a pick this game. B, how'd you like their play in this game?
Man, both quarterbacks had a great game. Will Howard, Ohio State, 28 for 35 for 326 yards, 2 touchdowns. Dylan Gabriel, it's crazy, almost had the same exact stat line. 23 for 34 for 341 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also had a 27-yard touchdown run early in the fourth quarter that gave the Ducks their first win, or their first lead of the game. Neither of them, like you said, had a turnover. It's a huge game. In my opinion, it hinged on 2 mistakes by Ohio State. One, Quinshawn Judkins fumble in the first quarter on Ohio State's own 28, which led to a 2-play, 28-yard touchdown drive. Second, Will Howard takes off with 4 seconds left on the clock for a 12-yard run, slides to the Oregon 26, starts sliding with 1 second left, didn't give him time to call a timeout. They still had a timeout left. He could have stopped at the 30 or the 35 and at least given them a chance to win that game. Doesn't, and they can't get a timeout called, and the game is over. Those 2 turnovers by Ohio State, I'd say the second one is not a turnover, but it works like one at some point. The first one is a turnover. Those 2 mistakes by Ohio State, in my opinion, is what cost them the game.
So what's his name again?
Quinshawn Judkins.
I just wanted you to get a good one in. That was good.
I did.
I like that.
I did, finally.
It
only took 3 tries.
There at the end, do you think they were distracted by Dan Lanning finding like a penalty loophole that actually benefited his Ducks late there in the game as he ran a 12th player out onto the field? It seems that it was purposeful, that he did that on purpose in order to run that 10 seconds off. How are we feeling about this? Dalton, I'll start with you, man.
Well, that's actually another thing I was going to bring up. He mentioned that in a game where the stats are very, very similar, the 1 turnover is a really big difference. Dylan Gabriel, in the end, I think had a better day as a quarterback, even though Will Howard didn't turn it over. He also didn't put the ball in the end zone. Then you look at the penalties. Ohio State got penalized 8 times for 70 yards. Oregon got penalized 3 times for 25 yards. And one of those penalties is what you mentioned. It's that on purpose. We don't really know. We think it is, but if that's the case, very smart play by Dan Lanning, because all it did was allow them to be in a position to win the game late. He was ahead of Ohio State in that moment. And it seems like in these big games, these big Big Ten games, there's a coach on the other sideline always one step ahead of Ryan Day. When it looks like Ryan Day is finally going to get that signature Big Ten win, he can't get it done. I think that was a very smart thing to do for Dan Lanning in Oregon. And so really you could chalk it down to, when you talk about the penalties, it was 8-2 in the penalties, because that was on purpose by Oregon so that they could run those 10 seconds off, which when I was reading about it and just trying to figure out, because it didn't make sense to me at first when they started talking about it. I'm like, what? Yeah. And then you read about it and you analyze the rule and it's like, wow, he's playing chess while Ryan Day's out here trying to play checkers. So yeah, heck of a job. I think both teams are pretty legit, honestly. They're both pretty dang good. Ohio State's going to get another shot. I don't know if it's going to be Oregon necessarily, but maybe it won't be in the Big Ten championship game, depending on how things play out. But both teams are very good. Both teams have solidified themselves as top 10 teams. And as long as they continue to play this way and take care of business, I think we'll see both teams for a long time.
It was definitely a dogfight. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good.
Oregon didn't even take their first lead. They trailed the whole game until, early in the fourth quarter when Dylan Gabriel had that 27-yard touchdown run in the fourth quarter. I think both of those teams are, in my opinion, legitimately 1 and 2 in the country, or in the 2 and 3 in the country. They're the top 2 teams in the Big Ten, no doubt. Sure. We're probably going to see them play again at the end of the year.
Do you think that this intentional, what seems to be intentional call of sending a 12th player out on the field, it fits in the same, for lack of a better term, unethical status of someone going down with an injury that's not an injury?
No.
Okay.
I don't. I think, like Dalton said, that's a coach that's playing chess while the other sideline's playing checkers. I think that's a great analogy for this. And I really feel like Oregon's coach, Dan Lanning, had that in his bag. I think he probably has thought about that before and just never had a chance to use it.
Well, and theoretically, he's the one getting hurt by doing that because he's getting the penalties on him, but in turn he's trading the penalty for the 10 seconds on the clock, which is just absolutely brilliant. I wonder if that comes up in meetings after this year is over with, that and guys just laying down on the field to stop play without a timeout or anything.
Something's got to be done with that. I mean, Dalton and I have talked about this before. I don't know if you've heard in some of our previous podcasts before you joined. I mean, I think that player that falls down and acts hurt shouldn't be able to come back in for the rest of that possession.
Well, why is it not? I mean, we could go off on this, but that it should be seen in the same light as your helmet coming off, right?
Yeah.
If you unintentionally lose your helmet, the other guy rips it off and they don't call a face mask or hands to the face, you still have to leave the game. You can't leave that's not the series, but you have to leave that next play and then you can come back in.
I mean, they have to do that too when they go down with an injury, but I think they shouldn't be able to play the whole rest of that series.
Okay. Yeah, as long as they if they take a timeout, they can come back. But most because they don't actually need, they have the sub ready to come in. They know they're going down. They're not ready to waste the timeout to put them back on. They're just trying to slow the game down. And we actually talked about it on Saturday. Ole Miss has a stat against them. It's happened to them 29 times this year. Now, what's funny is after we said that, Ole Miss actually did that late in the game to LSU.
Yep.
So everybody's doing it and trying to take advantage of it, and they're going to continue to do so until something's changed.
Yeah, the NCAA is going to have to change that rule for something to change in that. Until they do, teams are going to keep using it. And honestly, it's on the NCAA, in my opinion, at that point. They know it's happening. It's obviously happening in every week, every big game. It's happening with the team that's, behind the 8 ball on a drive that the other team's going fast. And the reason it's happened so much to Ole Miss is because they do run more plays than anybody in the country. They're number 1 in plays ran in the country on offense, and so they move fast. And so teams are going to keep doing it until the NCAA puts a stop to it.
I'm surprised in college football 25 you can't, downshift on the right paddle and just have one of your guys drop.
Right.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Midweek Breakdown podcast. Be sure to hit subscribe and check out the full podcast that drops every Wednesday during football season right here.